I pressed my palm flat against the cool glass of my office window and watched the last streaks of dusk settle over Boston. From 20 stories up, the city glitters like a field of fireflies, ambulance lights flashing, street lamps flickering awake. I'm still wearing my white coat, its weight both a comfort and a reminder of the 12-hour shift behind me. The faint scent of antiseptic clings to my silk blouse, no matter how many times I wash it. My phone buzzes against the polished mahogany desk, the vibration a soft growl that startles me more than it should. The screen lights up with my mother's name. For a moment I let it ring, the sound rattling against the quiet hum of the building's after-hours air system. I know this isn't a casual call. Not at this hour. Not after the article that went live this morning, my interview in the New England Medical Journal about the innovative pediatric program I've been building in secret for 3 years. A lump swells in my throat before I even swipe to answer. The old hurt stirs, the one I've kept hidden under layers of professionalism and long nights. I think of my sister, Chloe, and the day we both finished medical school. Same gowns, same dreams. Yet only one of us left without a mountain of debt. The phone vibrates again, insistent. I finally press accept. Olivia, my mother's voice trembles through the speaker. We need to talk about Chloe. The memory always begins with the smell of burnt coffee. It was late April, the final month of our 4th year, and the student lounge at the hospital looked like a battlefield. Empty paper cups, abandoned laptops, piles of crumpled notes. Chloe and I were side by side at a scratched table, both of us bleary-eyed and buzzing on too little sleep and too much caffeine. Our parents arrived together, a rare show of unity since Dad's retirement had turned him into a restless wanderer and Mom had doubled down on charity work. I remember the quick lift in Chloe's face when she saw them, like sunlight breaking through a storm cloud. I smiled too, until Mom set a manila envelope on the table. We wanted to talk before graduation, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Dad followed, his hand on her shoulder. Chloe tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Is everything okay? Mom nodded. Better than okay. We've decided to pay off your student loans, sweetheart. For a heartbeat, I felt my own chest expand. Then Mom's eyes shifted, not to me, but squarely, exclusively on Chloe. You've worked so hard, Dad added, beaming at my sister. We don't want you starting residency with that weight. The room tilted. I forced a smile. That's amazing. I managed my throat tight. Chloe's jaw slackened. Wait, what about Liv? She asked, using the nickname she'd given me when we were kids. Mom's hand fluttered in a dismissive half-wave. Olivia will be fine.
She's always been so independent.
Besides, we simply can't cover both. Your father's portfolio isn't what it used to be. The sting burned hot and fast, like alcohol on a fresh wound. I stared at the manila envelope, the edges frayed as if they'd rehearsed this conversation. Dad leaned forward, his voice warm. You understand, Liv. You've always landed on your feet. I swallowed hard, the taste of burnt coffee bitter on my tongue. Of course, I whispered, though my hands trembled beneath the table. Chloe turned to me, her hazel eyes clouded. Liv. It's fine, I said quickly, forcing a steadiness I didn't feel. That night, while Chloe celebrated with friends, I sat on the roof of our apartment building, knees drawn to my chest, the city humming below. The moonlight glinted off the stethoscope draped around my neck, a gift from Dr. Kaplan, my favorite attending. He'd engraved a single word inside the chest piece, resilient. I traced the letters with my fingertip, a quiet vow forming in the cool spring air. If they couldn't see my worth, I'd show them in a language no one could dismiss. Residency swallowed me whole. The first months blurred into a single, sleepless stretch of pre-dawn rounds and endless beeping monitors. My body existed on caffeine and muscle memory, my mind on the quiet fuel of defiance. Every time I signed another check to the loan servicer, I felt the pulse of that rooftop vow. I will prove you wrong. I worked the brutal shifts no one wanted, Christmas Eve, New Year's morning, the dead hours between midnight and 4. My sneakers wore thin, and my stethoscope's silver finish dulled from constant use. Yet each scar of exhaustion became a private badge. Dr. Kaplan, the same attending who had gifted me the engraved stethoscope, often found me reviewing charts long after the others had gone home. "You'll burn out, Bennett," he warned one night, his tie loosened, his smile gentle. "Maybe," I said, rubbing my temples, "but not before I finish what I started." He studied me for a long moment. "You have something most don't, a resilience that can't be taught. Don't let anyone convince you it isn't enough." His words became a lifeline during the darkest nights. I clung to them when I opened my first official loan statement, numbers that looked like they belonged to someone else's life. I whispered resilient under my breath and made the first payment anyway. Slowly, victories began to flicker through the haze. A young leukemia patient gripped my hand after his final treatment, whispering, "Thank you, Dr. Bennett." A senior surgeon invited me to assist in a complex pediatric operation and nodded with quiet approval afterward. I published my first research paper, small but mine. The paychecks were modest, but each one chipped away at the debt. I learned to live lean. Secondhand furniture, lunches of peanut butter sandwiches, vacations replaced by late-night walks along the Charles River. My social media stayed curated and spare, just enough photos of hospital hallways and sunsets to suggest a normal, busy doctor's life. No hint of the quiet war I was waging against those six figures. By my third year as an attending, the tide shifted. A pediatric clinic across the river needed a director for a new outreach program. The offer came with a salary that finally outpaced the monthly interest. I signed the contract with a hand that barely shook. The first day in my new office, sunlight spilled across the polished floors and caught the engraving on my stethoscope. Resilient. I traced the letters and thought of that manila envelope years ago. I made the final student loan payment at dawn on a rainy Tuesday. The email confirmation pinged quietly in my inbox, almost anticlimactic. No balloons, no fanfare, just the soft, liberating click of paid in full. I closed the laptop, inhaled the smell of fresh coffee, and let the silence settle. My parents still believed I was chipping away at the debt. Chloe still assumed we were both carrying it together. And I let them believe it, because the real triumph wasn't just financial. It was knowing I'd built this life on my own terms. The call from my mother earlier that evening lingered in my chest like an echo. "We need to talk about Chloe." She and Dad were already waiting when I pushed open the frosted glass doors of my clinic's main lobby. They looked small against the tall windows and the sweep of the marble floor. Mom's cardigan was draped neatly over her shoulders. Dad clutched his ever-present leather folio, like it could anchor him. Chloe stood between them, her hazel eyes soft but searching. "Liv," Mom said as I approached, her voice almost tentative. We didn't want to intrude. "But Chloe, she's in trouble." Chloe's fingers worried the strap of her purse. "My student loan servicer made a mistake. They say I owe nearly $20,000 more than we thought. It's complicated." I inhaled slowly, the scent of fresh lilies from the reception desk mingling with a faint antiseptic that never fully left the air. "And you need help?" Chloe's gaze dropped. "I hate to ask, but yes." Dad stepped forward. "We thought, maybe, you could lend a little until it's resolved. Just until we sort it out." A younger version of me might have flinched. Tonight, I simply straightened, the soft wool of my tailored blazer brushing my wrists. "Why don't you all come upstairs?" I said, motioning toward the elevator. The ride was silent except for the quiet hum of the motor. When the doors opened, we stepped into the heart of what I had built, my private office suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, the evening lights of Boston glittering like constellations. Framed pediatric art, bright crayon drawings from grateful patients, lined the walls. A mahogany bookshelf held medical journals and a single silver-framed photo of me with Dr. Kaplan, the stethoscope gleaming between us. Mom's eyes widened. "Olivia, this is beautiful." I moved behind my desk, the one I'd chosen for its clean lines and quiet strength. "This," I said evenly, "is the clinic I founded 3 years ago. The pediatric outreach program you read about this morning? I designed it, I run it, and I'm the sole owner. Chloe blinked. You own this? Yes. I let the single word hang in the air like a bell. I also finished paying off my student loans last year. The silence was a living thing. Dad's folio slipped a fraction in his grasp. Mom's lips parted, but no sound came. I continued, my voice steady. I worked every holiday, every overnight, every shift no one wanted. I lived on secondhand furniture and cold peanut butter sandwiches. And I paid every cent myself. Chloe whispered. Liv, I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said gently. I never wanted you to feel guilty. But when you all decided only one daughter deserved a clean start, I decided to make my own. Mom reached for the back of a chair, her face pale. We never meant to hurt you. We thought you'd manage. I did manage, I said, the faintest smile curving my lips. But not because you assumed I would. Because I chose to. Dad cleared his throat, eyes glistening. We underestimated you. I let the words settle. The skyline behind them glowed, streetlights and hospital windows blinking like distant stars. This clinic, I said softly, is my answer to that manila envelope. To every assumption that I would simply land on my feet. I didn't just land. I built the ground beneath me. Chloe stepped closer, tears bright in her eyes. Liv, you're incredible. For the first time in years, the ache in my chest loosened. The power was no longer theirs to grant or withhold. For a long moment no one spoke. The muted buzz of the city below filled the silence, a distant rhythm of car horns and crosswalk signals. I rested my hands lightly on the desk, feeling the smooth grain of the polished wood under my fingertips. The steadiness in my own voice surprised me. I'm willing to help, I said at last, but things can't stay the way they were. Mom blinked, her cardigan slipping slightly from her shoulders. What do you mean? I continued. This family has to stop treating independence like it's a punishment. You gave Chloe a clean slate because you believed she needed it. You assumed I didn't because I always looked strong. Dad's eyes lowered. We thought we were being practical. Practicality isn't an excuse for favoritism, I replied, the words firm but not sharp. I don't want repayment for the past. But if I'm going to lend money now, it comes with conditions. Chloe's eyebrows rose, a tentative flicker of curiosity. Conditions? Yes. I turned to her first. Chloe, you need to stand up for yourself, even with Mom and Dad. Stop smoothing everything over. I want you to promise that you'll set boundaries and insist on fairness, even when it's uncomfortable. Chloe swallowed hard, then nodded. I can do that. I shifted my gaze to our parents. And you two need to listen, really listen when we speak. No more quiet assumptions about who's strong enough or who needs protection. If you want my help, you have to start treating us as equals. Mom's eyes glistened. We never realized how much that hurt you. It did, I said gently. But we can heal it if you're willing to change. Dad finally met my eyes. What exactly are you asking of us? Simple things, I said. Family dinners where everyone speaks and everyone is heard. Decisions made together. No more secret envelopes. And the next time one of us succeeds, we celebrate it without comparison. Silence settled again, softer now, like a quilt being drawn across a bed. Chloe's voice broke at first. Liv, I'm sorry. I never wanted to be the favorite. I just accepted what they offered. I know, I said, my voice warm. This isn't about blame. It's about growth. For all of us. Mom stepped forward, tentative, and rested her hand over mine. We'll do better. I promise. A slow exhale left my chest, releasing years of quiet resentment. For the first time since that night in the student lounge, I felt the weight begin to lift. I'll help with the loan, I said softly. But remember, this isn't just money. It's a chance for all of us to start over. 2 weeks later, the four of us sat around the worn oak table in my parents' kitchen, a table that had witnessed every family milestone from childhood birthday cakes to late-night college debates. Tonight it held nothing more dramatic than steaming mugs of chamomile tea, but the air felt different, lighter, less brittle. Chloe was telling a story from her residency, something about a patient who had mistaken a saline flush for a latte, when Mom burst out laughing, the sound unguarded and bright. Dad reached over to squeeze her hand, and for once, the gesture didn't feel like a performance. I watched them quietly, my own tea cooling between my palms. The tension that had wrapped around me for years had eased. The knot I'd carried in my chest was finally loosening. When the conversation paused, Dad cleared his throat. "Olivia," he said, using my full name with a care that made me look up. "We can't change what we did, but we're listening now. We want to keep listening." Mom nodded, her eyes warm. "No more assumptions. About either of you." Chloe reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. "I want to hold us accountable too. From now on, we speak up, every one of us." A small smile tugged at my lips. It wasn't grand or cinematic, just real. "That's all I wanted," I said softly. "For us to see each other clearly." Later that night, back in my own apartment, I placed my stethoscope, the one Dr. Kaplan had engraved years ago, on my desk. The silver letters caught the lamplight. Resilient. I ran a fingertip over the word, feeling the groove of each letter. It no longer felt like a challenge hurled at an indifferent world. It felt like a quiet truth, settled deep in my bones. I thought of the girl on the rooftop years ago, her heart bruised by an envelope and a careless assumption. She had wanted proof that she could rise, build, and heal. Now, proof surrounded her. In the clinic she'd founded, in the family slowly learning to mend itself, in the steady beat of her own unshakable heart. I whispered the word once more, like a benediction. Resilient. And in the silence that followed, I felt the kind of strength that doesn't need anyone's permission, only the courage to claim it.